Nerdrotic.com.
Here we are after the fall of Skywalker, and Disney Star Wars is in its spin cycle, and apparently so is Jar Jar Abrams and Bad Reboot. Now, we had some leaks drop on Reddit a couple of days ago. Jeremy covered it on Geeks and Gamers in a pretty damn good live stream. I talked about it with Drunk 3PO in a pretty damn good live stream, and now I'm ready to make a video about it. And I promised my patrons I really wouldn't talk about Star Wars unless something big happened, and this is pretty big. But before I get started, if you like what I do here and you enjoy independent content here on YouTube, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking and sharing the videos. This is the only way up-and-coming YouTubers can remain competitive against the giant corporations like Disney and the BBC that YouTube has decided to prioritize on this platform. I thank you for a great 2019, and I thank you for your continued support. Now, let's get to Jar Jar Abrams and some of those leaks on Reddit. And by the way, I am not going to read you this whole thing. It is a tome, but I'll highlight some stuff just for context, because this video is just about my opinion on what is going on right now. And really, it's the only thing that I have left to cover. I don't want to talk about the plot of The Fall of Skywalker because it didn't have one. The Disney Star Wars trilogy didn't have a plan. There's no story there. It went out to sell toys, and all it did was kill the biggest franchise of all time. And we are well into the subset of the culture war that is the pop culture war. And we're starting to see these giant corporations reaping what they have sown. They have arrived at what we all like to call a reckoning, and that is crossing your fandom, lying to your fandom. Now, there are little white lies you can tell about production, which are perfectly fine, but like I said in my last Star Wars video, which you can watch right here, the entire Disney Star Wars trilogy was based on a lie. The lie that Han, Luke, and Leia would be together on screen, getting into adventures together. But that never happened. Disney Star Wars decided to spread it out, as you all know, and Jar Jar Abrams was behind that decision. The last time I checked, Jar Jar Abrams was one of the co-writers and directors of The Force Awakens, the film that didn't have Luke Skywalker saying a single word and not showing up until the last 30 seconds. Also, Jar Jar Abrams was the man who didn't build up any of these characters, didn't provide any context, and handed Rian Johnson a blank canvas. And like it or not, Jar Jar Abrams was complicit with Kathleen Kennedy by wanting to put identity politics in our timeless little tale. And again, my good friend Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers and his crew did a brilliant live stream covering these unverified rumors, these Reddit leaks. Are you happy, YouTube police? And I will link that in the description, and props to them for getting released the JJ cut and released the Abrams cut trending on Twitter. Now, I have opinions on that I will get into later in the video. But when these Reddit leaks dropped, a couple of hours later, there was an IndieWire article interviewing one of the editors of The Fall of Skywalker. And both the leaks and that IndieWire article served the same purpose: covering Jar Jar Abrams' ass, covering Bad Reboot's ass, because they are about to go and screw up DC at Warner Brothers. And yes, I am 100% convinced. Rise of Skywalker editor opens up on Rush production, agrees film is fan service. Wrong, it was Jar Jar Abrams and Disney Star Wars service. It's a struggle. It affected everything. Jar Jar Abrams' longtime editor, Marion Brandon, says of rushing to meet the December 20th release date. And Jar Jar Abrams had been mentioning in multiple interviews that he didn't have as much time as he had with The Fall of Skywalker. Again, he still said yes. Most critics agree that Star Wars: The Fall of Skywalker is a disappointing finale to the 9-film Skywalker saga. No, it's an expectedly disappointing finale to the Disney Star Wars trilogy. And many have been wondering, since the film's December 20th release, whether or not it would have been stronger had the production been given more time to breathe. Now, that's interesting that they bring this up, because that was brought up in the Reddit leak. While appearing on the Rough Cut podcast via the playlist, Fall of Skywalker editor Marion Brandon admitted that the film's production was rushed, which made for a challenging editing process. Brandon is Fall of Skywalker director Jar Jar Abrams' longtime editor, having worked with him on TV's Alias Plus, Mission Impossible 3, Star Trek, and Star Wars: The Force Awakens, among other projects. And again, to all the Star Wars fans out there, those of us who have been Star Trek fans for quite some time are very familiar with Jar Jar Abrams' work and any company affiliated with Bad Reboot like Secret Hideout and Alex Kurtzman. Those of us who have been criticizing Star Trek for a while have been in an information war with CBS for quite some time, and I'll explain that a little bit later in the video. We were definitely still trying to figure out a lot of stuff, Brandon said about the sped up editing process. It's a struggle. It affected everything. About a third of the way through, Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy was like, JJ has got to spend more time in the cutting room. And I knew that wasn't going to happen. Not with the schedule that we were on, not with what he was dealing with on a daily basis. He was just exhausted at the end of the day. I don't want anybody to get the impression that I am defending Disney, Star Wars, or Jar Jar Abrams. They are both equally responsible for destroying the franchise of Star Wars, along with Rian Johnson. But I'll tell you exactly why Jar Jar Abrams was exhausted. He was also negotiating a $500 million deal with Disney's competition. He was also trying to get some more Star Trek stuff into production so he can maintain control of that too. It's very hard for one person to oversee and destroy that many franchises, so I'm sure he was exhausted. To the leaks, Jar Jar is very successful at bringing back franchises like Mission Impossible, Star Trek, and Star Wars. That almost sounds like it was written by the PR department of Bad Reboot. For one, he wasn't responsible in bringing back Mission Impossible. He was a hired gun. And every other franchise he has been a part of, he leaves in complete destruction. You know that scene you see in every action film with our hero walking in slow motion away from an explosion? That is Jar Jar Abrams with every franchise. And the same is going to happen with Warner Brothers and DC. This is spin. WB is struggling with DC, and aside from Wonder Woman, DC is still seen as a bit of a joke in its current state by the general audience. Again, this sounds like it was written by Bad Reboot PR. Back to IndieWire. According to Brandon's estimates, the Rise of Skywalker crew had 3 months less to work on the latest Star Wars movie than was the case for The Force Awakens, and Jar Jar Abrams has repeated this in multiple interviews. Disney set a December 20th, 2019 release date for the movie that could not be moved, forcing Brandon to edit on set so that the production schedule was maintained. Why did you have to edit on set? Was it possibly because of multiple reshoots? I suggested I cut on set. We had 2 tented rooms, so I was just wherever Jar Jar was, usually 10 feet away from the camera, wherever the camera was, Brandon said, and I just mobily cut, and in between takes, Jar Jar could sit down with me and we could go over things. Now back to the leaks, because they mentioned something my good friend Doomcock reported on a couple of months ago. In January, Jar Jar suggested that they turn this into 2 films. My source told me this well before Terrio mentioned it in an interview a couple of days ago. When Disney said no, Jar Jar was content with making this 3 hours long. That's what I had heard the movie was going to be, a 3-hour-long Star Wars movie, the longest Star Wars movie ever. Over a period of 9 months, Jar Jar started realizing that one by one, his ideas and whole scenes were being thrown out the window or entirely altered by people who have no business meddling with the creatives, well, repurposers. I said in my review of The Fall of Skywalker that the leaks had more context, had more characterization than the actual film. And it seems like the leaks here are providing that context. I'm not going to go over it. Again, refer to the live streams linked below. I'm just going over the information about Jar Jar because to me, this feels like somebody from Bad Reboot or associated with Bad Reboot or a good friend of Jar Jar Abrams is out there doing a little CY CYA. The leakers for The Fall of Skywalker had an agenda and are tied to Disney directly. Well, that's obvious. My source confessed that they have an agenda as well, in that they struggle with ignoring what's been happening to someone who they think doesn't deserve it. Jar Jar always treated everyone on and offset with respect, so my source's agenda is that what Disney has done to Jar Jar and how much they screwed him over should be something people are at least aware of, whether you like him as a filmmaker or not. I am definitely in the or not camp. Disney was one of the studios who were in that bad reboot bidding war last year. Disney never had much interest in bad reboot as a company, but they did in Jar Jar because they saw WB, who Jar Jar went with in the end, as a major threat. Kevin Feige of Marvel feeling threatened by Jar Jar Abrams, maybe sometime in the past that might have been true, but not now. Not since a little movie came out this summer, which we're going to talk about in a second. Now, I've already read this bit, and it goes on to mention how successful Jar Jar is at bringing franchises back, but it fails to mention what shape they are in after he leaves. WB wants Abrams for some DC projects. My source said that this generation's Star Wars is the MCU, and Marvel's biggest threat is a well-operational DC. They want to keep DC in the limbo that they're in right now. Abrams jump-starting that franchise with something like a successful, audience-pleasing Superman movie makes them nervous. Their goal is to make Jar Jar look bad to potential investors/shareholders. So Disney is sabotaging their own film to make Jar Jar Abrams look bad to their competition, Warner Brothers. I find that very hard to believe, but I find that perspective very easy to believe from someone who is affiliated or friendly with Bad Reboot. To be perfectly clear, any argument I ever make against Jar Jar Abrams or J.J. Abrams is not on a personal level. It is about his work. It is about his involvement in franchises and what he does to them. Also, what he does behind the scenes. All the skullduggery that goes on with anything that he's involved with or affiliated with when it comes to the access media and criticisms. There is a ton of spin. I will ask you, what has he done to deserve $500 million at Warner Brothers? We now see that Disney Star Wars was an unplanned disaster. You can make an argument that The Force Awakens earned him some goodwill. No longer. That is gone. And maybe, just maybe, Warner Brothers is rethinking things because of the Joker. Todd Phillips came in and completely changed the game. My source mentioned this shortly after the premiere. The Fall of Skywalker we saw last night was not the Fall of Skywalker we thought we worked on. Now, this is not unheard of in Hollywood. Actually, this happens all of the time, but probably doesn't happen to Jar Jar Abrams very much, because despite what I think, what the normies think out there, and what these investors and shareholders think is that Jar Jar is the next Spielberg, they haven't wised up to this yet. But this is part of the reason why the fandom menace is always ahead of the curve. They might figure it out in a couple of years. He had been feeling down over the last 6 months. Well, I thought he was busy making Star Wars for the last 6 months. Did he have time to feel down? Because of some of the ridiculous demands Disney had that changed his movie's story. While the scenes were shot, a lot of the changes were made in post-production and the audio was re-recorded and altered. My source said they'd never seen anything like this happen before. He's the director and he wasn't in the know about what they were doing behind his back. Apparently, Jar Jar felt threatened over the month leading up to the premiere. Felt threatened how? I'm sorry, I can't see Jar Jar Abrams feeling threatened by anyone, but the spin is definitely on, and I look forward to the counter spin from Disney. And we have 3 camps going at each other now. We've got the fandom, Bad Reboot, and Disney Star Wars, and it's going to be very entertaining. Rian was never meant to do 9, despite some rumors that he was. I had never heard that Rian Johnson was going to do episode 9, but I can definitely believe it because KK really loved him. Jar Jar was brought back by Iger, not KK. Disney insisted on more fan service, less controversy. That I absolutely believe. Jeremy and I were at New York Comic-Con and we talked to somebody who was in some meetings with Bob Iger, and they said as much, that they didn't want this much controversy around their Star Wars films. Controversy that they created, by the way, not the fandom. Jar Jar's original agreement when he signed on was indicating he would have way more creative control than he did on The Force Awakens. It became evident this wasn't the case only a couple of weeks into shooting when the trouble with meddling started. Jar Jar wanted to do some scenes he thought were important, but Disney shut it down, citing budgetary reasons. Again, the commonality I find between the IndieWire article and those Reddit leaks, besides the timing, is the tone. This wasn't Jar Jar's fault. Disney meddling. And I remind you that Brandon is a verified source, an editor on The Fall of Skywalker, back to IndieWire. As for the negative critical reception of The Fall of Skywalker, Brandon said, in a time when the whole world is polarized, it should not be a film that is polarizing. Precisely what the Fandom Menace has been saying for over 2 years. Basically, the message of the film is, hey, you know what? You can be bad and good can come into your life. And maybe if you're open-minded to it, extraordinary things can change your mind. Exactly. And you have to believe there's always hope. But as you and I both know, hope is not a strategy. One of the biggest complaints thrown at The Fall of Skywalker is that the movie is pure fan service. No, this is a narrative from the Access media, which is not a claim Brandon will try to fight. Look, sure, it's fan service. The editor said, and I still don't think it is, it's Jar Jar Abrams service and Disney Star Wars service. But if you didn't service the fans, it would be, oh, he didn't go along with the history of Star Wars and what it all means, which is exactly what happened in The Fall of Skywalker. Props to Jeremy and the Geeks and Gamers crew for getting released the JJ cut and released the Abrams cut trending. That shows the power of the Fandom Menace. But I really don't care if there's a JJ cut, a JJ Kennedy cut, an Iger Kennedy cut, a Lucas cut, a Lucas Stanley Kubrick cut. It's not going to save this franchise. They went over a lot of the plot that was left out, apparently, of the 3-hour version JJ had intended on putting out. And what I didn't read in there was a resurrected Luke Skywalker has a force battle with a Dark Lord of the Sith that is not Emperor Palpatine. As last time I checked, Luke Skywalker is still a dead dick. Last time I checked, Palpatine was still brought back, negating Anakin's sacrifice and Luke Skywalker's story. Last time I checked, Disney Star Wars has turned a modern myth into a simple category on a subpar streaming service. Well done, everyone. And am I supposed to feel sorry for Jar Jar Abrams now? He negotiated a $500 million deal with the competition while he was working on Disney Star Wars. Bad Reboot oversees a lot of projects, and I don't know how involved Jar Jar is, but he's probably involved somewhat considering it's his company. And we cannot forget the Joker. It changed everything. Believe me, every Hollywood executive noticed that a film that cost around $50 million to make earned $1 billion worldwide without China. And it's a well-known fact that anything Jar Jar Abrams is involved with is going to be very expensive. So the only threat to Jar Jar Abrams is Todd Phillips. Jar Jar Abrams is complicit in the destruction of Disney Star Wars and part of the reason they have to rebuild this thing from scratch. And now they are just going to play it safe and muck around in the past, giving us prequels to a larger story that has now been rendered meaningless. And what's the biggest threat to Marvel? Unfortunately, it's Disney and Kevin Feige. That is a video for another day. So the Disney Star Wars Blame Game Chronicles continue, and I look forward to probably making another video next week on this very subject once we get some more spin. Until then, everybody have a great day. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like what you heard. If you didn't like what you heard, thank you for listening this long, and I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.